Dopamine. You probably recognize the word, but you might relate it back to drug education in high school health class. Well, I'm here today to inform you that there is so much more to dopamine than drug and alcohol abuse. Let's get a refresher. Dopamine is one of the many neurotransmitters used by the nervous system. This particular neurotransmitter is used to create a feeling of desire and satisfaction within us. The cells make it and the hypothalamus release it. Now, even though drug abuse and risky behaviors aren't all that dopamine has to do with, understanding addiction lays a foundation for understanding dopamine's role in the body. An article from Harvard Health in 2019 sheds light on addictions. We all know that drugs such as nicotine, heroin, and cocaine can be addictive, but not everybody knows that behaviors such as pornography, gambling, or even overeating can become just as addictive. The article also explains how dopamine creates pleasurable memories with one's addictive substance or behavior, and this motivates a person to keep feeding their addiction because of the positive association. Now, further down the road, the positive memories stay intact, but the same dopamine high does not. This is because, and I quote the article, in a person who becomes addictive, brain receptors become overwhelmed. The brain responds by producing less dopamine or eliminating dopamine receptors, unquote. This means the addicted person will now need more of their addictive substance or behavior to receive the same amount of pleasure as before. Knowing why someone stays in addiction is interesting, but knowing the root cause of an addiction or risky behavior can help us to stay away from forming one. Unreflective emotion regulation can lead to an addiction, and we need to know how to avoid it. Abigail Ralston, BA, and Elizabeth Lloyd Richardson, PhD, researched self-injury and recovery through Cornell University and discussed emotion regulation. They defined it as a person's ability to effectively manage and respond to an emotional experience. Now, Ralston and Lloyd Richardson share how instead of working through the negative emotions, many will engage in harmful but addictive behaviors to receive a dopamine spike that quells the negative feelings temporarily. The more this is done, the more this is reinforced, since dopamine is associated with the pleasure and learning response. This is unreflective emotion regulation, and engaging in it too often can become addicting. Other unhealthy forms of unreflective emotion regulation Ralston and Lloyd identified present themselves through self-injury, withdrawing from difficult situations or society, physical or verbal aggression, excessive social media usage, and neglecting responsibilities. There's a better way to deal with emotion regulation, and this is called reflective emotion regulation. This is where someone doesn't try to numb out their negative feelings. Instead, they deal with them positively. And this can be done through writing in a journal, talking with friends, praying, taking a walk, medication, therapy, exercising, getting an adequate amount of sleep, noticing when you need to take a break and actually taking one, and giving yourself a healthy dosage of self-love. Through these methods, one can avoid addiction and deal with their emotions healthily. There are also positives to dopamine. The reward circuit, a positive to dopamine, creates positive behaviors. According to Haber and Dunstan from the Department of Pharmacology and Physiology at the University of Rochester School of Medicine, New York, the reward circuit is the neural structures triggered by dopamine. It develops incentive-based learning, a positive response to external environmental stimuli, motivation, and planning. Next thing that's positive is the attachment theory. According to the Journal of Neuroendocrinology, a parent or someone of importance to an infant will send out social cues, such as touch, to a child. The child's reward system will then send out oxytocin, which triggers dopamine. The more dopamine the child receives, the more he or she feels secure in the relationship. Lastly, learning is positive, specifically positive reinforcement, a type of operant conditioning. In 1938, famous behavioral psychologist B.F. Skinner coined the term operant conditioning, defining it as changing of behavior by the use of reinforcement, which is given after a desired response. Now, we know that reinforcement can be created by the pleasurable feeling of dopamine with drugs. Well, this can also be used in positive ways. Many teachers positively reinforce their students' good behavior by complimenting them. This sends a dopamine boost to the brain, thus increasing the likelihood of the child doing the behavior again. In short, dopamine is a neurotransmitter in charge of pleasure, learning, and satisfaction, and it can have both negative and positive effects on our brains, bodies, and lives.